Hello, namaste. Welcome back to Bhagavatam for Rationalists. In this episode 38, we're going to see Krishna and Balarama move to Dwaraka. So, in the last episode, we saw that they completed their education in the ashram of Sandipani Maharshi and had returned to Mathura. So, as soon as they returned to Mathura, one of the first things that Krishna does is sends message to Vrindavan to everyone, just telling them that they're okay and they'll come and visit them soon. So he sends his friend called Uddhava, who becomes a lifelong friend to Krishna and stays with him for the rest of his life. So Uddhava dutifully goes to Vrindavan and gives everyone messages. So to the elder ones, the parental types, like to Yashoda, to Nanda and Rohini, he gives them the message Krishna and Balaram miss them very much and they miss the village. They will soon come back and visit mom and dad. Then, in the secret meeting place by the banks of the Yamuna, he also meets the Gopikas. And to Gopikas, he gives them the message that Krishna will, in fact, come and visit them soon. And Gopikas respond with this lovely genre of poetry called Bhramara Geetikas, or songs to the honeybee. And I'll give you just one example of it from Bhagavatam, because there are so many of them in and outside of Bhagavatam, but I'll just give you one. This is essentially a way of complaining to Krishna, complaining to God about God, essentially asking him, "What are you doing? Why? Why would you do something like this?" Anyway, Kanchana Ratna Sanghatita Saudhambule Ma Kutirambulu Madhavunaku వివిధ నరేంద్ర సేవిత రాజధానియే మా పల్లె యదువంశ మండనునకు సురభిపాదపలతా శోభితారామమే మా యరణ్యము సింహ మధ్యమునకు కమనీయ లక్షణ గజ తురంగంబులే మా ధేనువులు కంస మర్దనునకు రూప విభ్రమ నైపుణ రూఢలైన మఘువలమె మేము మన్మథ మన్మధునకు ఏల చింతించు మము కృష్ణుడేల తలచు పృథివి నధిపులు నూతన ప్రియులుగారే. So here is the complaint they have. These men of the earth, essentially including Krishna among the men of the earth, and saying, don't they run after novelty? And they are essentially demanding that he should not abandon him by giving the comparisons. Okay, Krishna now has access to things in the glamorous, glorious city of Mathura. And then here all we have are, very simple things. Like, for example, we have just cottages here, and he's got access to like golden castles in Mathura. This is not a village that anyone visits, whereas the city is served all the time by kings and various VIPs visiting him all the time. He's got all these beautiful, manicured, glorious gardens with exotic, species of plants and animals. But then all we have is a little wild forest by the Yamuna. We just have simple cows, and he's, looking at all these gloriously decorated horses and elephants and riding them and so forth. He is Cupid's Cupid, Manmadha's Manmadha. That means he's Cupid to Cupid himself. And so he's looking at all these glamorous city girls who are expert in the techniques of becoming, looking beautiful with all their, you know, uh, various ornaments and various lepanams and so forth. So, how can we simple village girls compare to all that? So, why would he think of us? So, essentially, there is this aching sense of inadequacy where they're saying, yeah, we know that we're not as beautiful as those city girls. We know we're not as glamorous. We don't use those kind of cosmetics and so on. But still, they're demanding, they're questioning, is it really right, Krishna, that you would abandon us? Why would you abandon us? You're just going after whatever is new. So there are many such poems, but we won't go into those. This is a way of telling God himself that he's doing something wrong, and there are plenty of poems and songs that go into that genre. And they do this as a song to a honeybee in the form of talking to a honeybee, because Krishna is, of course, not in front of them, and Uddhava, there is no point yelling at him. It's not his fault that Krishna has abandoned them. Anyway, let's get back to Mathura. There was trouble from the neighboring kingdoms. Um, the neighboring kingdom to the east was Magadha. This was a big kingdom, and Jarasandha was the king of Magadha. It turns out Jarasandha was father to Kamsa's wives Asti and Prasti. So, because Asti and Prasti have gone back to his father, he knows everything about how Kamsa was killed, and Jarasandha is therefore furious at the people who killed his son in law, the Yadavas, Krishna and Balarama, and vows to make the world itself Yadava free. And so he attacks Mathura with a humongous army of 23 Akshahinis, it said. That's a little over 5 million troops. Now, even with modern armies, you'll be hard pressed to find an army that has 5 million troops. You might have one or two countries that do that. So, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, you might wonder what is an Akshauhini? What is this unit? Akshauhini is sort of like, what you might call a battalion today, except much bigger. So, in the ancient times, they used to have what was called Chaturanga Bala or four-way troops. So that's Ratha, Gaja, Haya, Padati. That means chariots, elephants, horses, and foot soldiers. Now, the ideal ratio for these was supposed to be 1, 1, 3, 5. So, one chariot, one elephant, three horses, and five foot soldiers. So this unit of 1135 was called a patti. And rising by a factor at each step, so three pattis is a senamukha, three senamukhas is a gulma, three gulmas is a gana, and so on, going through Vahini, Prutana, Chamu, and Anikini. So that Anikini is 7 steps down, 2187 pattis. And at this point, an Akshauhini is supposed to be 10 Anikinis, which means it has 21,870 soldiers on chariots, an equal number on elephants, 65,610 on horseback, and 109,350 on foot. So a total of 218,700 soldiers in an Akshauhini, and Jarasandha brings it with 23 Akshahinis. By all measures, this is a massive, massive siege of Mathura. Even for the ancient time, the Mahabharata war, probably among the biggest that we talk about in all of Bharatam, it only involved 18 Akshahinis meeting in Kurukshetra, and that includes troops on both sides. There were 11 Akshahinis on the Kaurava side and 7 on the Pandava side. So, by all measures, a massive siege. And on looking at this, Krishna decides what is the mission of his life. ఏనవతరించుటెల్లను మానుగ జతురంత ధరణి బండల భరమున్ మానుపుగొరకుంగాదే పూనిద నిధి మొదలు ధగలి భూభరమణపన్. So he's been killing, bad guys, onesies and twosies here and there. But now looking at all this, he says the main reason I was born is to reduce the load of Mother Earth in the form of all these tyrants. So from this day forth, that shall be my mission. This is what Krishna decides. And so Krishna and Balaram use their divine power. They lead Mathura's army, decimate the invading army from Magadha, and therefore repel the siege. Even though the invading army itself is decimated, Jarasandha escapes. And even though he had come there with this huge army of 5 million troops, he is still stupid enough to not consider and think about divine power and divine strategy on the other side. He thinks all he needs is a little more troops and he would have victory against Mathura. So, with that, he forms an alliance with Kala Yavana and gets ready for the next siege. And who is this Kala Yavana? Yavana in the name implies he's a Westerner, so maybe some sort of a general non Vedic king. He could be like a Bactrian or a Persian king or maybe a Greek king. And Kala implies that he was dark skinned. Maybe it's just representing the dark time that Mathura was having, or the fact that Kala Yavana was maybe dark natured. He may have been a composite of multiple different invasions that happened. But anyhow, between Jarasandha from Mathura and Kala Yavana from the west, there is a pincer attack on Mathura. So Jarasandha is coming from Magadha on the east, Kala Yavana coming from the west, and you have Mathura right in the middle. So it is said that Kala Yavana alone had 30 million troops. We were having almost, heart stoppage because of 5 million troops. Now we have 5 times as many, 6 times as many with 30 million troops from Kala Yavana. So looking at this, Krishna decides that it's not right to make Mathura have rivers of blood. So he runs away from that war. He recognizes that Jarasandha and Kalayavana are here for revenge against him. They have no interest really in Mathura. So Krishna flees the war, which is against all principles of valorhood and chivalry and, being a Kshatriya and so forth. And because he flees, he is to this day famous as with the name Rann Chhod, the one who left a war. So Kala Yavana chases Krishna even as he runs far away to the west. Kala Yavana chases him, and when he's far away from civilian populations, Kala Yavana gets killed. So this aspect of Krishna's life of being a Ranchhod is worshipped specifically in this temple called Ranchhod Raiji Temple. It's an 18th century temple built in Dakor, Gujarat. So this picture you're seeing is what is called Bet Dwaraka. It's about 30 kilometers west of Dwaraka in the sea, an island. So, for looking at a long term solution to this constant threat of war and siege coming from Magadha, coming from the west, and so forth, Krishna decides that he needs to go away and move the city. When he was young, his father Nanda had moved the whole village from Gokulam to Vrindavan because all these bad guys were there attacking Krishna. Now, Krishna himself is an adult and he decides he needs to defend his city by moving it away from Mathura, where it was ready to be attacked from all sides, to Dwaraka, which is on the west coast. He commissions Vishwakarma to build a magnificent and impregnable city. It said that it was 12 yojana square, that's about 100 kilometers on each side of a square, and it's built on reclaimed islands on the west coast. This city was supposed to be so magnificent that కూడి గ్రహంబులు దిరుగగ మేడల తుది నిలువులందు మెలగడి బాలల్ క్రీడింపరు పురుషులతో వ్రీడందద్వేళలందు వినుమావీటన్. So this is a description of the skyscrapers of Dwarka. They were so high that the girls who lived in those top floors would feel shy and they would not romance with their men. At times, that planets are visible because these skyscrapers are reaching way up high, all the way up to the planets. Uh, a hyperbole for sure, but it's just describing the magnificence of the city of Dwarka. Now, it is said that Dwarka might have submerged later, and so now we have the Archaeological Survey of India commissioning a dive team to go into the ocean and dive in there to look for this long lost city, to look for submerged ruins in the Gulf of Kutch. And that dive team left in the February of last year in 2025, about a year ago. Findings from the dive are not yet published, but it is said that there are preliminary evidence of a submerged city in there. So, having moved to the west coast, so remember, all of the army is based on land-based attack with elephants and horses and foot soldiers and chariots and so on. So, being on the coast in an impregnable fort, they feel like they are safe. Now that they are safe, it is time for Krishna and Balarama to get married. We will cover that in the next episode. I hope to see you there. Thank you very much for your attention so far.